There's a moment that happens in certain gardens. You turn a corner and the light changes. The air feels different. Nothing announces it, no sign explains it, but suddenly you feel something. English gardens are often described as beautiful, natural or timeless. But beneath their plants and paths lie ideas, deeply human ideas. In this series, we're uncovering the hidden DNA of the English garden. Not just how these landscapes look, but why they make us feel the way they do. In this episode, we explore the DNA of feeling, how emotion, memory and personal experience transformed English garden design forever. By the late 19th century, something had begun to change. The English garden was no longer primarily about power, no longer a declaration of wealth, empire or control. Instead, it was becoming personal. For centuries, gardens had spoken outward. They told visitors who owned the land, who held authority, who shaped nature. But now, gardens began to speak inward. They became places not to impress others, but to move the person walking through them. This shift mirrored broader cultural changes. Industrialisation had altered daily life, cities grew louder, denser, more mechanical, and people began to crave intimacy, calm and meaning. The garden became a refuge, not from nature, but from modern life itself. The idea of the cottage garden did not begin as a design movement. It began as necessity. Around rural cottages, plants were grown close together, flowers mixed with vegetables, herbs shared space with fruit trees. There was no grand plan, no symmetry imposed from above, yet these gardens felt alive. They were seasonal, imperfect and deeply human. As industrial society expanded, these humble gardens were romanticised. They came to represent a lost connection to land, labour and rhythm. The cottage garden became an emotional symbol of simplicity, authenticity and care, and for the first time, messiness became meaningful. No one shaped this emotional turn more profoundly than Gertrude Jekyll. Jekyll was not trained as a gardener first. She was trained as an artist. She painted, she studied colour theory, and she understood composition, contrast and harmony. When she turned to garden design, she brought those principles with her. But unlike earlier designers, Jekyll was not interested in dominating the landscape. She wanted to orchestrate feeling. Her borders were composed like paintings, colours flowed from cool to warm, textures softened transitions, plants were chosen not just for form but for mood. Walking through a Jekyll garden was meant to feel like moving through time. From spring freshness to summer richness to autumn calm, emotion became the medium. Importantly, Jekyll did not reject structure. She collaborated closely with architect Edward Ludens, whose stone walls, steps and terraces provided quiet order. Paths still guided movement, boundaries still existed, but they no longer shouted. This balance was crucial. Too much structure felt authoritarian and too little felt chaotic. The emotional garden required restraint, a framework gentle enough to disappear yet strong enough to hold experience together. This is where English garden design reached a rare maturity. Control did not vanish, it softened. So at this point, the garden began to operate differently. It was no longer a symbol to be read, it was an experience to be remembered. Certain plants carried emotional weight. Roses for nostalgia, lavender for calm, foxgloves for mystery. Paths curved not to impress, but to delay, to invite wondering. Views were framed not for dominance, but for quiet surprise. The garden became a container for memory, a place where people marked seasons, grief, joy, and time passing. and once emotion entered the garden, it never truly left. This emotional legacy still shapes gardens today. Even modern rewilding and naturalistic planting owes something to this shift. Not just ecological concern, but emotional longing. We want gardens to feel meaningful and comforting and alive. Yet, tensions remain. Emotion can romanticise nature. It can soften hard truths about land use, labour and ecological limits. The English garden still walks a delicate line between care and control and between feeling and responsibility. When we look closely, the emotional garden tells us something important. It shows that design is never neutral. Gardens reflect how people see themselves in the world. Once that meant authority, then spectacle, then feeling. Today it increasingly means relationship. The English garden has evolved from command to illusion to abundance to emotion, and each layer remains beneath the surface. English gardens feel natural, but they're anything but accidental. They're built from ideas, layered slowly, quietly, over centuries. In this episode, we uncovered the DNA of feeling, how emotion reshaped the garden into a place of memory, intimacy, and care. In the next episode, we'll look at what comes after emotion, when responsibility enters the garden and design begins to reckon with ecology, climate, and coexistence. Because the English garden has never stopped evolving.